Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalists Roundtable. We'll look at the week's top stories, including the latest on the fight over conforming Arizona's tax code with federal changes. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. It's Friday, and that means it's time for the Journalists Roundtable. And joining us tonight, Howie Fisher from Capital Media Services, Cameron Sanchez from KJZZ Radio, and Jim Small of the Arizona Mirror. Panel, good to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining us. Howie, we'll start with you. Tax conformity. What is tax conformity? Why is it such a big deal down there? And why can't they get it figured out?
Well, first of all, the trick is don't try to do your own taxes. That's why they make these programs that have CPAs. In general, Arizona is what they call a piggyback state. So you start your taxes with your federal adjusted gross income, and then you make the adjustments and such. Normally very simple. Big, beautiful bill, enacted a whole bunch of things, higher standard deduction, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, senior deductions, things like that. The governor's office prepared, or the Department of Revenue, her Department of Revenue prepared some tax forms based on what Congress did, along with conforming these other little things. Turns out, A, the Republicans don't like it, and B, if you actually use those forms, the odds are decent you're going to have to file an amended return, because there are certain things that are built into that. For example, the federal adjusted gross income includes higher deductions for state and local taxes. This is stuff that is above the line. So they've been fighting over this. The governor's already vetoed the first Republican proposal. Second one headed for her next week, veto number 2. So we're going to keep struggling along. Meanwhile, something like 400 and some thousand people have already filed their returns and just hoping and praying that they don't have to do it again.
And the tax conformity 2.0, 1.0 was obviously, as Howie mentioned, vetoed. This one's probably headed for the same fate. However, on this one, the Republicans were saying something along the lines of, listen, what we're doing conforms to those tax forms that are already been released, as Howie referred to as well. So it's a little, does that make any difference at all?
I think it should make a bit of a difference, but I don't think she's going to see it that way. So we started off the year, she introduced her plan, which she calls the middle class tax cuts package, which includes some tax cuts and is a smaller plan because it doesn't include all of them. But she wants them to only pass her plan, put that on her desk. And then she says we can deal with everything else. We can deal with your other ideas and paying for it and those little pesky things. The Republicans, of course, didn't want to pass her plan. They wanted to pass their own, and it was similar to conformity, but with a few tweaks. She killed that, and now they're saying, look, we're way too late on this because, as Howie mentioned, people are already filing. And ADOR, which is the Department of Revenue, which is actually under Hobbs's jurisdiction, gave out what they would normally do for guidance, roughly, which is they assumed full conformity. So they said, let's just do that. Let's just do what the guidance is out there so then people won't have to do amended returns and we'll just get this off of our plates and we'll have the tax cuts in order.
Yeah, and Jim, the Republicans are saying they're cleaning up the mess created by Governor Hobbs. They got a point here?
Well, this is something that you kind of look at it, and so many other states handle this. This one big beautiful bill got passed signed into law in July, right? And there were lots and lots of states that are in similar positions as Arizona's, where you have to conform your state tax code to the federal code and figure out how you're going to do that. That came into special legislative session during an off-election year and sorted this stuff out back in the fall. Why Arizona didn't? Unclear. I mean, the governor announced, kind of released the parameters of this tax cut in mid-November, but that was also around the same time where you had the Department of Revenue coming out and saying, hey, just file your taxes. Like, we're going to update our forms to match what the feds are doing. There's been a lot of mixed messaging. I think that there were some missed opportunities to try to get this done, A, before the legislative session, so it wouldn't be, a main issue right now, and B, before people started filing their taxes. To Howie's point, where you do create this drama that, really is kind of self-inflicted, I think, from the governor's part at the end of the day.
And this is the problem, because what you have is a situation where the Republican lawmakers in November said to the governor, look, before we come in, before the people start filing, let's get together. And the governor's response was, well, we need to enact the budget first, meaning all the stuff that she wants to add in, and then we'll talk. But you can enact my things, and then trust me, because I will, I'm sure, negotiate with you. Obviously, that wasn't going to happen. This is, as Jim says, this is a self-inflicted wound, and I blame a lot of this on the governor because of the fact that she had the opportunity to say, look, we can discuss the parameters of the budget. Obviously, I have things I want, they have things they want, they have tax cuts they want, but you could have started this out, and the governor basically said, my way or the highway.
So a 2.0 most likely headed for a veto, correct?
Yes.
What
once
about
again.
what happened? So is there going to be a 3.0, and what's going to happen here?
I guess there has to be, and there's some speculation of what if we move the budget up and did the budget as soon as possible, but that's somewhat unrealistic because the Democrats have complained about that in years prior. We usually don't do the budget until pretty much the last point of the session, like April, May, June. And part of that is because we get more information in April about what the state finances are like, but that's beside the point. I think the pressure is just going to build because we're in a bad moment for everyone filing their taxes who doesn't want to have to file them again. Because for one thing, it's annoying. And for one thing, it's expensive if you're having to go through a system.
Sure.
Like some of us who don't know how to file our own taxes.
Jim, so basically political. Let's just get political here. Who takes the hit on this now and in the future?
No, I mean, I think that the governor is the one that kind of has it hanging out on this right now. And I think a lot of that is just because it doesn't, I mean, to Howie's point, I mean, her position, was essentially to kind of come in late and then to say my way or the highway. And I don't think that that's going to fly. And I think that if you have a lot of people, if you have hundreds of thousands of people who have to refile their taxes, like Cameron said, it's a pain, right? No one wants to file their taxes in the first place. You really don't want to have to come back and file it again, especially if you're going to end up having to. I guess maybe it's a salve if you're getting some more money back, but if you have to end up paying more money, I mean, it's just a whole, really just kind of a logistical.
Well, if you're getting more money back, you kind of want it now. You don't have to sit there and amend and kick the can down the road.
It's one of the very important point. You can go to a Tax Act or something, and there's some free filing software. Amended returns, as I understand it, have to be done on paper. You can't just go back to the original program. And that gets into some real tricky things for those of us journalists who are math impaired in terms of, wait, you didn't add line 27 in here. And that is just something that nobody wants.
No kidding. All right, let's move on here. Cameron, we had a ruling today regarding abortion laws that were on the books even after the voter-approved measure from 2024 with the constitutional amendment and such, and those laws no longer on the books.
Yeah, a whole series of them voided as of today's ruling. So they did a variety of things, like making abortions just slightly harder to access or take longer to get to, like a 24-hour waiting period, or you have to get blood testing, or you have to listen to the doctor give you all this certain information before you're allowed to have an abortion. That's no longer the case, and it's because of the voter-passed measure, which amended our Constitution to say, well, Arizonans have this right to abortion before fetal viability. So the judge agreed, and we're expecting an appeal on that. But
Indeed. Jim, going to you here. Basically, the judge said, this specifically says that this stuff can't stand and shouldn't stand. Is that a surprise ruling at all? And why did it happen now?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. Why it happened now is because even though voters passed this constitutional amendment in 2024, there's still a whole series, a whole framework of abortion regulations on the books that has been on the books, over the last 30 years. Most of which are aimed at trying to, as Cameron said, trying to delay access and trying to throw up hurdles and barriers for women to access abortion services. Just because voters passed that and put it in the Constitution didn't necessarily mean it wiped out everything. What it basically did is it set the stage for advocates, for patients, for doctors to go to court and say, hey, this law, these laws are contrary to what the voters said. And so that's what essentially happened here. There's, I don't know, probably about a dozen laws, 10 or 12 laws that were challenged. Watching the trial, this ruling's not a surprise. I think the judge was pretty skeptical, I think, of the arguments from the lawyers for Republican legislative leaders who were defending the laws. And there's, the constitutional provision sets out a framework, basically like a multi-pronged test that, any law that's going to restrict access to abortion needs to meet these, 3 or 4 criteria. And the judge said, across the board, none of these laws meet all of them. And they're required to meet all of them. They might meet one. All the time they may meet 1 or 2, a couple, in certain circumstances, but they don't meet these criteria, and therefore they're unconstitutional.
And that's really the key, because if you look at it, it not only puts in the quote-unquote fundamental right to abortion, but it further defines it to say that the only way the state can come in is if there's a compelling state interest and it has to be in the least restrictive means, and it can only take into consideration the health of the mother. The health of the fetus is irrelevant. And so you've got this multi-part test that's set up here. There's also a specific thing in the constitutional amendment about interfering with a woman's autonomy. And the judge mentioned that several times, saying so many of these things, the fact of can you have an abortion if you have a fetal defect? And the original law said, no, you can't do that. This says, no, she's entitled to that autonomy.
Well, with that in mind, then, if there is an appeal, and certainly there will be an appeal from Republican legislative leaders, what's the appeal?
No, stop. We don't like that.
Really, what could
no,
it be?
it's true. I mean, they, I guess, would say the compelling state interest is like the health of the life of the fetus matters, and abortion is not just a right that affects those patients, but. It's a pretty strong case. As Howie said, it seems that the people who wrote the measure had all of this in mind potentially as they were writing it, and they expected that these laws would be in their sights going forward. And this is not the only case that we've seen. There was another one filed this week that's also challenging one of our abortion restriction laws that's already on the books.
And this is really critical because your point about they will say, well, there's actually two people involved in that. The specific language that was crafted by the folks who put together Prop 139 said, in so many words, the fetus is not relevant to this. It is only what matters to the health of the mother, and that is the prime directive here.
And we should mention, Jim, that the 60+% approval here on that ballot measure in 2024.
Right, overwhelming approval, and it in fact it won in every single legislative district, regardless of no matter how conservative the legislative district was. This passed and won voter approval across the state.
What's very important is I had talked to Kathy Herod, who at the time was
Who is Kathy Herod?
Kathy Herod was the head of the Center for Arizona Policy. They're a very conservative organization, very anti-abortion. I talked to her and other people. When Prop 139 was being proposed, they said, it's so radical, it's so radical. And I said, well, why don't you propose something that's more acceptable to you folks in terms of allowing things, like one of the first things they got rid of was the 15-week ban on abortion. And their attitude was, this will never fly, we can defeat it. Failing to understand that since abortion had been legal in Arizona since 1973, with Roe versus Wade, that a lot of people were unwilling to go backwards.
Cameron, we have I don't know if we have it official yet, but it sounds like a candidate in Congressional District 1 on the Republican primary doesn't want to be a candidate there anymore, but the Secretary of State job looks interesting.
It does, to Gina Swoboda, who was a former employee at the Secretary of State's office and considers herself, an elections, I don't know if she would say elections worker, but she has expertise in that field. And she is going against Jay Feely in CD1, which is a little bit dangerous because they both have Trump's endorsement. He's a pretty strong candidate. There's also Joseph Chaplik in that race. So I think she's considering her options, or possibly has already made up her mind and not told us yet. But if she jumps into the Secretary of State's race, then she's going against Alexander Kolodin instead. And he is in the Freedom Caucus, who already doesn't like her. So there's no love lost there. Plus, he doesn't have Trump's endorsement, so maybe she would be able to carve out a nice spot for herself.
Jim, as far as this switch would be concerned, it sounds. Did it seem like so? But has her campaign in CD1 does it have traction? I don't seem to hear much about it.
No, I think that it's been very low key, and I think we've seen the campaign finance reports. I think that some difficulty. I think raising the kind of money you need to mount a congressional campaign, particularly in a district that's going to be highly competitive like that. I think Jay Feely, when he jumped into that race, came in with a much better name ID, not necessarily in the political realm, but just as a former pro athlete, who spent part of his career in the Valley, and so that really complicated things for her. I think that she jumped into that race early, was able to get Trump's endorsement quickly, and was hoping to kind of box out, I think, a lot of other Republicans. When Jay Feely moved from the East Valley district into the Scottsdale-based district, that kind of scrambled that. And so I think that there is, there's been a bunch of polling that's going on in that district. I live in the district. I've gotten the polls, probably 4 or 5 of them over the past month.
Yeah.
Almost all of them focused on Feely and Swoboda and trying to figure out. So I'm sure that everyone is trying to figure out, what does the landscape look like? Is there a path to victory for Gina Swoboda? The fact that she's looking at Secretary of State's race tells me that there probably isn't, or if there is, it's a really narrow one.
And the other funny thing is, as Cameron sort of suggested, is now she's saying, well, I did file a statement of interest, which allows me to go ahead and do fundraising and do and get petitions. But I want to wait and see whether Trump's endorsement of me in CD1 follows me into the Secretary of State.
I was going
race.
to ask if that endorsement is transferable.
Well, to a certain extent, it would be real hard for Trump to say, well, I only like you for this, but not for that. But the problem is going to be that probably everyone in the MAGA crowd has already written to Trump's staff to say, you do know this is a woman who said, for example, that maybe there should be reforms of voucher systems. This is a woman who also suggested that Trump's actions on immigration have hurt the Republican Party. And that may deny her that endorsement.
Yeah, and the MAGA thoughts and Turning Point, the clash between her and Turning Point as well. Is that transferable?
Yeah, Turning Point, I would say, is very much behind Culloden and has been, as with the Freedom Caucus. It's kind of the same ilk, and they've been mad at Swoboda for a long time for many of those same things, so it remains to be seen. But I know there are candidates in the past who, if they ever had a kind word from Trump, they will never stop talking about it. It's on the front page of their website forever, no matter how many years it's been, no matter what office they're running for. You would think that they were best friends based on how much it comes up. So, maybe she's showing some integrity. I'm not sure.
Well, the interesting thing has to be for the Republicans to decide. This is a variation on, the governor's race and the Senate race for the Republicans before is Alexander Culloden acceptable? He certainly has certain name ID from the things he's proposed, but some of what he's proposed is a little, over the top. For example, he wants to make it harder for you to drop off your early ballot on Election Day. And so some of that is going to be, if you nominate somebody who is so far off of the center, he could get the nomination, and then Fontes, who has been very much involved in protecting voter rights, you might have a better chance. I think that Swoboda would have a better chance against Fontes.
But is that those kinds of equations? Do they even come to play and especially in the primaries, where the most extreme, it seems, on both sides seem to have the upper hand?
I think history would tell us that in Republican primaries, in particular,
yes.
I think no. I don't think that a forethought toward what this is going to mean for the general election is on the top minds of at least enough voters in Republican primaries. We've seen that. I mean, look at all the statewide races we've had and the U.S. Senate races we've had over the past, 6 years, 8 years. I think that we've had a whole series of Republicans who were great in the primary and had very obvious liabilities in the general election and then went on to lose those elections.
And that applies to CD1 as well, because you would think that in that particular district, which, it is as hard right as maybe some Republicans would want it to be, that a Swoboda would have a better chance against the Democratic.
But it's that primary thing, and I agree with Jim, and we look back 4 years to the last time we had all these big statewide elections, and that clearly wasn't the thought process of who's more electable in the general election. Is it the same as the people in the primaries when they put up Blake Masters, Abe Hamadeh, Kari Lake, and whoever against the Democrats, and the Democrats had I think, a better year than they expected to.
Howie, please, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the other piece of it is a one-to-one is probably better for Swoboda. I mean, you'll have a debate here. And if it's for the primary, if it's Swoboda versus Culloden, I think people will get to see the distinct differences. If it's 7 people running in CD1, it's hard for anyone to break out.
Howie, sticking with you, the governor has a new Know Your Rights website. What's this all about?
Well, politically or legally?
Both.
Both. Legally speaking, she is doing what a lot of governors have done and say, look, there have been a lot of instances, certainly what happened in Minneapolis, people being killed, people being dragged from their cars. You have certain rights. Some of it sounds like Miranda warnings. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. Telling people, if you think you're going to be picked up, carry certain forms of ID. The fact is you don't have to let people into your home. You don't even have to open the door. You have to have a judicial warrant, which, of course, puts her at odds with the Trump administration, which says no. The political side of it is this comes, and they assure me this is purely coincidental, several days after the governor threw the attorney general under the bus for discussing people's rights if, in fact, they're confronted by someone in a mask who they don't know and using what the state law allows in terms of deadly physical force.
I was going to say, any mention of Stand Your Ground in this particular website?
No, I didn't. I didn't spot any of that, which was obviously what Chris Mays had mentioned, and the thing that really, I think made Republicans and a lot of law enforcement pretty irate. But no, there's really not. This is interesting. This website, if only in the sense that it doesn't really mention Trump by name, but it is kind of the most pointed criticism I think we've seen from the governor in terms of Trump's immigration agenda and the deportations and the ICE violence and things like that. She's been trying to keep her head clear of that, and this definitely looked like they saw something going on and they wanted to kind of catch a wave a little bit of enthusiasm or kind of momentum politically with what was going on.
And again, this is guidance, but not legal advice.
Sure.
Yes.
I think it's really funny. I'm sorry, but like the whole thing with Mays and then Hobbs, I think it was the interpretation of a lot of Democrats that she was betraying Mays because they've been going in two very different directions on this whole thing. And all of a sudden she puts out her own website, which is similar to Mays's website. Mays also has a website and says, oh, okay, by the way, here's what you can do if law enforcement comes towards you. I don't know. I think it's hard to say that like it wasn't based on what Mays was already doing.
Okay. Then we won't. Talk about going in different directions. Maricopa County. Holy smokes, the Board of Supervisors subpoenas 3 workers from the recorder's office? I mean, I thought can't they just be friends?
Can't we all just get along? This is part of what's happened ever since the election of Mr. Heap as a recorder, who's decided, I should be in charge of everything election related. Only thing was that his predecessor, Mr. Richer, had told the supervisors before he left office, oh, by the way, you hang on to this. He didn't say Justin's crazy, but to a certain extent, there was a little bit of that built in. So meanwhile, the board is going ahead and taking its actions. The Heap sued. Then you had the fact that he retained his own attorney, which caused County Attorney Rachel Mitchell to say, no, you can't have your own attorney. And meanwhile, the board has subpoenaed some of his employees who have given, interestingly enough, some conflicting testimony in terms of whether some people were disenfranchised. And so the judge this past week said, no, let's not subpoena anyone just yet until we straighten out what the underlying issues are.
And again, this is basically Justin Heap, the county recorder, is once again saying they're bullying us, they're intimidating us. This is not right. Yeah, and that's this is a fight that I think we could kind of see coming after he got elected last year, and certainly before he was finally elected, the Board of Supervisors I think took some steps to try to Justin Heap-proof the elections a little bit to try to take back some of the roles and some of the things that they have with their own election department versus the recorder's department. And we've seen, there's some great reporting. I know VoteBeat and Jen Fifield did some great reporting on text messages back and forth about, Justin Heap essentially trying to triangulate people and claiming that he was working with the lone Democrat on the board and, all of this, trying to get his way and trying to sort of curry favor and pit supervisors against each other. This is all tied into that, and they had a budget presentation last week where it was his first time getting in front of the board since a lot of this had been publicized, and the board was highly critical of him, and there was some obviously hot tempers, and people did not forget what had happened, and so I think this is all kind of wrapped up in that, and so the board feels aggrieved, Justin Heap feels aggrieved, and we're in litigation now, so the courts are going to end up having to sort out who is legally correct and who has the authority to do what they want to do. Is there any concern regarding the actual election process in Maricopa County and the vote with all this mayhem, this brouhaha? I mean, they do have a job to do there.
Yeah, there is now because at the I guess that was the second to last court hearing. I actually watched it and I was confused because I'm not an elections expert and I actually had to call like 4 people afterwards to make sure I understood. But his staff went up there and said, we're mad at the Board of Supervisors because we accidentally disenfranchised voters in 2024. And I was like, what? First of all, not under Heap's purview. Second of all, how many people? They gave conflicting answers. Thirdly, they're saying it's because they didn't have this machine that Heap really wants that's really expensive, which is a whole other thing. And Corey, the attorney, was like, don't you already have machines that do that? And Sam Stone, who's Heap's chief of staff, was like, do we? And I was like, oh boy. So the Board of Supervisors was like, are you accusing us of disenfranchising voters? Because that's a really serious charge. And then they were kind of like, oh no, we didn't mean that our office was doing that. And they were like, well, what? And so that's why the subpoena. And the judge, bless him, kind of basically for both of these cases said, please do have a conversation amongst yourselves and leave me out of it. I don't want to see you in my courtroom. Like, you guys could solve this by having a conversation.
Yeah.
And he didn't say it's silly, but I think the judge is a little bit fed up with this.
But how is this any way to run an airline? I mean, what's going on, Dan?
Well, but this is still, look, you still have people, you've still got Carrie Lake running around insisting she's governor or senator, I'm never quite sure which. You have people who are saying, let's take this back, going back to 1998 and the way the county has run the elections, and this has all been a big farce, and there are people who will continue to believe, no matter what you tell them, that somehow the fix was in. We even seen that with Pima County. You know, Chris Nanos, the sheriff, has gotten a lot of national publicity. He won by a couple of hundred votes. Now they're saying, well, he was illegally put in because he was a Democrat. You know, nobody, when your candidate loses, particularly if you're a Republican, the situation seems to be, we were cheated.
Real quickly.
I just want to clarify before this goes viral on Telegram. We're talking about maybe up to 100 people who voted federal only as opposed to provisional.
Yes, yes.
Full state.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that. Panel, good to have you here. Thank you for joining us. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
When you want to be more inspired, Arizona PBS delivers unforgettable experiences in music, theater, and the arts, thanks to members like you and